One of the most key and fundamental requirements we have in our brief here is the ability to have e-commerce. So e-commerce is one of these slightly outdated terms that people like to use, a bit like email, and it refers to anything where there's an exchange of money between someone who's visiting a website and the website itself. So I'm going to be referring to it mostly as an online store or an online shop to make it a little bit clearer to what we're actually building. Now, to get yourself set up with an online shop is quite straightforward nowadays. There are a lot of options out there, and it's almost difficult to make a decision because there are so many. But I'm going to run through a few of the most popular ones, talk about the pros and the cons before eventually arriving at our decision. Now, perhaps the most popular one that you will most likely have heard of is Shopify. Now, Shopify is a hosted platform, which means they take care of all the back-end coding for you, and you can just really focus on your products and your shop. Now, it's great because it's quick and easy to get set up with. They take care of the security and the compliance and all that kind of stuff. But the downside is that it's a pay monthly fee. So the basic one starts at $29, and they also take 2.2% plus 20p, which is about, I'm not sure how many cents, I think about 27 cents on each purchase. So that's the kind of downside to it, is you have to pay a monthly fee. As your business grows, you have to pay more monthly fee, but they take less cut of your sales. But there's a lot of really, really big companies that use Shopify. So just to give you an example, let's say big websites that use Shopify. Here we go. So Budweiser use it, WaterAid, big charity, The Economist magazine, Penguin Books, Tesla Motors, Red Bull, Kim Kardashian's beauty range, the National Portrait Gallery, more Kardashian cosmetics, Yeezy Supply, so Kardashian's other half, Lady Gaga's official shop, and all of these brands are using Shopify to really just take care of all of that stuff that we don't really want to concern ourselves too much with. So all of the back-end coding. So Shopify is great, but it does have its downsides. They take a cut of every payment. So if you're selling lots and lots of products, it might not be the best option for you. Or if you just want to play around with things, it might not be the best option either. Now, another option that we have is Magento. So Magento is a hosted option, and it's quite popular in the enterprise space for people that want to build online shops and have a lot of customization there. Now, its downside is it is expensive. You have to buy it, and it's licensed out, and its upsides are that it has a very, very good code base that is easy to extend, has lots of documentation, but it's pretty much dedicated to online shops. So you'd have to almost have it as a separate thing to your own website, which could make things a little bit difficult. Like WordPress, it's also written in PHP. That makes it quite accessible to have other developers working on it. What we also have is Squarespace Commerce. Squarespace were originally just a CMS system for building your own website, and they branched into e-commerce a few years ago or so now. So it's pretty similar to Shopify, but has more of a Squarespacey feel to it. So more sort of sleek in its design. Now, the thing that I didn't mention with both Squarespace Commerce and also Shopify is that you don't really have much control over the checkout system. So it's pretty much a pre-designed checkout system that you can't really customize too much. You pretty much just put your logo in there, but it's a default sort of theme you get. But with your actual shop front, so the way your products look and things like that, you can theme it, but you've also not got unlimited flexibility there either. You have to work within their template system that they give you, and you can't actually access the back-end code to do any kind of custom stuff. Now, the last option that I'm going to talk about on the kind of hosted side of things, so along with Squarespace and Shopify, is Big Cartel. Now, I really like Big Cartel because they're more aimed at indie sort of smaller shops, especially artists and makers, as they say on the homepage. So I recently bought a vinyl online, and it was done through Big Cartel. It was pretty much just a guy in his living room in Sydney printing and packaging up vinyls, and he sold them through Big Cartel. And it's a really, really nice experience to go through. They've got some great examples of what they do. However, it's the same thing as Shopify and Squarespace. You have to pay a monthly fee, and also you have a very limited number of customizations you can make to it. So if you want to go really advanced, those perhaps might not be the best options for you. Now, we've been learning WordPress until so far, so I'm not going to suddenly say we're going to build a Shopify website. That will be the topic of perhaps another course. We are going to look at e-commerce options inside of WordPress instead. So I went off to Google and I just typed in WordPress e-commerce. I found this top result here, and I'm going to take you through a few of the best suggested plugins for WordPress. Now, our first and top option we're going to ignore for the moment because there's a little bit of a story that I'm going to tell that's going to lead to why we decided on this one. But some other options we have are easy digital downloads. So if you're selling downloadable things, so perhaps if you were selling online coding courses, a bit like we do, you would use a plugin like Easy Digital Downloads to do that. Or perhaps if you're a music producer, you could use that plugin as well. Shopify. Now, I have no idea why Shopify has made it onto the list of WordPress plugins because it is a hosted platform. It's a separate thing. So we'll just scroll on past that one. Now, MemberPress is designed for membership type websites. So if you had some content on your website that you wanted people to have paid access to, say per month or per year, or whatever amount of time it might be, this would be your go-to plugin to do that. And it would go beyond just having access to content. You can have products and different levels of access as well. So quite a good one to look at if you want to build a membership website. Then lastly, what we have is Shop. So Shop with 2 P's. And this was one of the first ones to really come into the WordPress sort of e-commerce plugin market. Now, as you can tell from the design of the site, it's got a bit of a 2010 design aesthetic to it. And the designers amongst you will appreciate that the design trends on the web, they change as quickly as the seasons in the year. But that's really nothing to hold against it. In fact, I quite like the design aesthetics of years past. However, Shop was one of the first plugins that came along and really tackled the problem of how to combine WordPress and e-commerce. They were typically two things that never really came together. So the good things about Shop was it's very easy to set up, had a very basic configuration. You would add some products and then you'd just be able to sell them. Now, its pros were also its cons in that it was so simple. It had quite a rigid structure in the way that you could theme and make your site look. So in terms of the product design page, to be able to style it and to be able to break out of the sort of stock template was a little bit tricky. And when things started going wrong there, it was a bit difficult to get support as well, because it was very new territory, e-commerce in WordPress, and it took a little while for it to sort of pick up and gain traction. Fast forward a year or so to about 2011, along came another e-commerce plugin, and that was called JigoShop. Now, what you see right here, this very stock image, corporate looking website, and what JigoShop was in 2011 are now two completely separate things. And there's a bit of a backstory about how those came to be. Essentially, JigoShop was created by 2 independent developers based about 50 kilometers north of where I am right now, near Cambridge, and they set out to build something that had the simplicity of things like Shop, but with extensibility so you could easily customize it to your own needs. And at the time, I had a client project where I needed to build an online shop into the website. And I was doing my research about what options to use. So I was looking at things like Shopify. And I, perchance, just stumbled across JigoShop. And it was in a very beta phase at the time. And I kind of took my chances on it. So I used it on my website, sort of tested it out. And it worked very, very well. It solved the problems that I needed to solve perfectly. So even though it was in a beta phase, it was a very, very well-built plugin. And it started to gain a little bit of popularity soon after. Now that same year, I went to a meetup in London that was run by a company called WooThemes. Now WooThemes, as the name might imply, were a company that sold WordPress themes. Now, on the surface of it, that might not sound very fancy at all, but they were a pretty big deal. So given that WordPress powers about 30% of the web, there is a huge, huge market for people who want to buy premium themes, so paid themes. And they were big enough, so much so that their logo was designed by the same person who designed the Firefox logo, so a guy called John Hicks. He's also done the Skype logo. He's done things for Spotify. He's a real design hero of mine. He designed their logo, so it looked like WooThemes. Where is it? There we go. So he designed this ninja character for them. And they were also big enough so much so that they were able to fly their 30-strong person team of people out to London. So although they were headquartered in Cape Town in South Africa, they were having a kind of team retreat where people could get to meet each other for the first time, because they had people in the States, spread across Europe and Asia, I think even from Australia and of course Africa as well, because that's where they were headquartered. And they had one evening where it was just an open invite and people could come along and meet the team and generally just have a few talks, and it was pretty cool. So I went along as an enthusiastic and eager 20-year-old, and I had some very interesting conversations with various developers and designers who worked there. But perhaps one of the most interesting conversations I had was with one of the co-founders. So I was pretty much hitting this guy AD with loads of questions about WooThemes and WordPress and what their plans were for the future. And the conversation switched to him asking me about what I actually did and what projects I worked on. And I was talking about a project I was currently doing for a client where I had this struggle with trying to find an e-commerce solution for WordPress. And I was kind of saying, why isn't WooThemes tackling this problem? Like, you have a 30-person strong team. It's totally an opportunity there. And I mentioned things like JigoShop, which he didn't really seem to have heard of. And he didn't seem too forthcoming in the conversation about e-commerce and WordPress, which I didn't pay too much attention to at the time. Fast forward about 4 weeks later from that meetup, WooThemes acquired JigoShop. So little did I know at the time, AD fully knew about JigoShop, and I think he was probably had to keep quiet about things until they were fully announced. So what happened was WooThemes, they acquired JigoShop and they renamed it WooCommerce. And WooCommerce lived alongside WooThemes' other theme store. So they sold their premium themes, they also had their WooCommerce section, and they did a lot of work on it to develop it. So what they did was to build lots of extensions that could really flex it beyond its standard functionality. So adding support for automated shipping, different payment providers, marketing plugins, you name it. They had so many different things on the go, and it really ballooned in popularity and size. So WooCommerce existed for about 4 or 5 years until WooThemes were acquired by an even bigger company. So by this point, there were probably about 50 people in size, and they got acquired by Automattic. So if you think about the WordPress food chain, Automattic are at the absolute top of it. they own WordPress.com. They acquired WooThemes and just rebranded it to WooCommerce, but they own a bunch of other products like SimpleNote, which I use for note taking, Gravatar, which does sort of universal avatars based on your email address, Akismet, which is an anti-spam system, and all of these tools. They're a pretty huge company. Now, what's good about Automattic is they are a non-profit organization, and all of this code is open source. So for us, that means we are able to use it for free, and the way that they make their money is with hosted platforms. So if you're not proficient with setting up hosting or developing websites, you can come in here and set up your own store, a bit like Shopify, and you pay a monthly subscription for that. The same with WordPress.com. They make their money. Oh, it's telling me my activity blocker has blocked WordPress. It says it's distracting. But essentially, WordPress.com has a paid tier as well. And the CEO of Automattic is a guy called Matt Mullenweg, if I get his name right. Perfect. So this is the guy who created WordPress back in 2004. So he's now 34. So he would have been about 20 at the time he created WordPress, which makes me feel pretty terrible about my own achievements. But Automattic are a really great company because he really gets behind open source and he believes in open software and kind of sharing things like for like. So we are going to be using WooCommerce for our project. It is an open source plugin that we can download for free and use in our project. There's no monthly fees we need to pay there. And if we wanted to, we can plug in extensions and pay for those. But the basic functionality is pretty much all we're going to need. So what we'll do in our next clip is to get set up with it. We'll explore around and see what it can actually do and just get a feel for all the features and what we can do from our brief to be able to solve the problems that we need to solve.